If you've been interested in motorcycles in Singapore for a while now, you should have heard about this old adage amongst Singaporean bikers: don't buy a Kawasaki motorcycle in Singapore. And today I'm going to explain to you why that saying exists. Now, if you are buying a motorcycle and it is your only motorcycle of choice, I mean if you're going to have only one bike or it's your first bike, I would say follow that advice. Do not buy a Kawasaki motorcycle in Singapore. A lot of you guys out there are going to ask me, hey RP, you ride a Kawasaki yourself, you have a ZX6R. And yes, I do have one, and it is exactly because I have a Kawasaki motorcycle that I am qualified to let you know that buying a Kawasaki motorcycle in Singapore as your first or only motorcycle is a very, very bad idea. Don't get me wrong, I actually love my Kawasaki motorcycle. My ZX6R is an amazing bike. It's got a lot of power, and I think it's probably better than almost any other 2005 600cc Super Sport out there. But the thing is that if you were to buy a Kawasaki motorcycle in Singapore, it is going to be, for lack of a better word, a big headache. This is because, well, support for Kawasaki is very, very bad in Singapore, as opposed to Malaysia actually. Now, here's the reason. Unlike, I'm not going to mention the company names, but unlike the Honda distributor and the Yamaha distributor in Singapore, which are big, which are established, and have a solid reputation for being reliable in sourcing for parts, the only Kawasaki dealer in Singapore is small, and they don't exactly have a very good reputation. And this is why I'm not naming any names. You guys can go and figure out who the dealers are yourselves. So what I say is that if you are planning to buy a Kawasaki, avoid, you know, bikes that are old. In fact, I have realized that for bikes older than 5 to 7 years in Singapore, for Kawasaki models, parts tend to start becoming hard to get. The distributor in Singapore does not stock a lot of parts. So if you want to get any parts for your bike, unless it is a brand new, you know, 2017, 2016, 2015 model that is pretty recent actually, well, you're gonna have to get them from either US or Japan. Japan is relatively cheaper for Singaporean buyers. But it's still relatively expensive if you consider the fact that, you know, the Honda and Yamaha distributor in Singapore, they you know, keep a mass stock of parts in their inventory at bulk prices. And for example, recently my regulator and my battery died. Actually, my battery died because of the regulator, the rectifier, voltage rectifier. And guess what I have to pay? I had to pay 300 bucks to ship the rectifier from Japan. If you want to buy a voltage rectifier for, let's say, a Honda CBR 600RR, okay, which could be 10 years old by now, but it's still in, you know, it's still a pretty common bike in Singapore. You know, a Honda 2005 CBR 600 could only cost you maybe 180 to replace that rectifier. But I had to pay $120 more because I had to get it from an overseas supplier. A lot of Kawa riders would recommend that if you'd like to save a bit of money, you could try going up to Malaysia, because in contrast to Singapore, Malaysia has very good Actually very good Kawasaki support. They've got a big Kawasaki following there. Kawasaki is probably the most popular brand after Honda in Malaysia, and it shows. So most would say, oh shit, I think I missed my turn. Well, so if you want to buy a Kawasaki in Singapore and you got parts you want to replace for cheap, you could always go to Malaysia. But you know, if you're riding an expensive sport bike that you hold dear, sometimes you don't really want to go there, because motorcycle theft rates in Johor Bahru, which is where you always have to enter from Singapore anyway, is very very high in several hotspots throughout the area. So unless you have a group of friends that you generally travel to Malaysia often with, you know, getting the parts from Malaysia is not always a possible option. So I'm not saying that you can't. I mean, if you want to buy, you can. The only reason I bought my Kawasaki motorcycle, my ZX6R, is because it's not my commuter. I have another bike. I don't need to rely on this, and I can afford to let it sit and wait every time there's a problem with it. You know, even though, you know, if something happens, I have to wait 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe even months for parts to come. But to me, it's fine. But for the rest of you, if you are, you know, thinking of buying one, do try and think again. It's not always roses, you know, when owning a Kawasaki in Singapore. Now I've got to find my exact route to Suntec, because I missed the exit, and I really hate this area because it is full of single direction roads, and you have to, you know, just meander around and find the actual right road. And I can't really memorize this place all the time. I guess the only exception to the rule for, you know, the Kawasaki do not buy Kawasaki bikes rule is, well, the KR150 or ZX150 that is already out of production. But if you buy a used bike, well, it's still okay, because there's a lot of parts for that bike. The bike is freaking popular in Singapore. You can find parts to fix that thing everywhere you go. Also, because Kawasaki's are imported in relatively smaller numbers in Singapore, prices for these bikes are pretty high. So that's something to think about when you're buying them. So if you like this video, you thought it was interesting, give me a like. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, do give me a subscribe down in the description below. And I'll see you next time. Peace out. Bye bye.